Hey, what is going on, everybody? I hope everyone had an awesome holiday, and now we're basically back to normal, sort of, anyways, given what's going on in the world, but life does go on, and so does Marvel Strike Force. In today's video, I want to start off the year with a 2021 store farm guide for newer and mid-game players on which characters they should be collecting as they go through the game. We're going to be going over the Blitz, Arena, Raid, and War stores, which have a variety of characters in these stores and can be really overwhelming, especially for newer players, knowing who is good and who is worth getting and for what reason. So hopefully by the end of this video we can hope to solve that question. So without further ado, let's get this video started. So we're going to start off things first here in the Blitz store. Now there is a lot of things in here more recently. There's of course the war stuff that you can do with your credits. You can get some catalysts if you really need to, but really we're here to talk about the character shards that you can get. Now one of the first recommendations that I would have for the Blitz store is actually Rhino here. He's part of the Sinister Six and he's also a Spider-Verse character. So the main reason why I suggest this is usually when I talk to people who are new to the game, I recommend Wave 1 Avengers for the Heroes campaign and Sinister Six for the Villains campaign. And because of that, or the reason why I recommend that is because you can double use Rhino for the Invisible Woman legendary event and for the Shuri legendary event. So Shuri requires Spider-Verse characters, which Rhino is, and that's considered all of the sort of Spider-Man type characters are all related to Spider-Verse, which is for Shuri, and Invisible Woman requires Sinister Six. Now there is actually more than 6 at this point that you can choose from, but Rhino specifically is one from the Blitz store that you'll want to consider, and he'll be a good starting character for your Villains campaign anyways. So after Rhino, to be honest, there's not a lot of priority characters in this store, but I do want to give mention to Strife. Now he wasn't a very good character, he wasn't as good of a character kind of before, but more recently he did have a rework which gave him a lot better barrier for him as a tank. He is a Marauders, which again isn't really used for any priority events, and he's not used for any legendary events or flash events, but he is still a very solid villain character, and he's also in one of the top meta teams in the game, which is Marauders, which includes Mr. Sinister, Strife, Emma Frost. Emma Frost actually isn't a Marauder, but she's in that team, and Mystique and Sabretooth, although Sabretooth is often subbed out for other characters, which I'm not really going to talk about in this video. So Strife is kind of a secondary character that I would recommend getting shards for after Rhino. Now really after 5-star of Rhino and Strife, it gets a bit optional, as many of these characters aren't overly required for too much stuff or anywhere close to the current meta. Personally, I think Blitz Orbs, I think is probably the better way to go to get shards for cheaper and with some gold on the side if there's no immediate rush to collect shards for certain characters. So I believe, I have a lot of these Blitz Orbs, but I believe that you can get them for 350 Blitz credits. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And other than that, there are some characters like Mantis that does help towards unlocking Star-Lord, so Mantis is down here. But frankly, I think he's way past his expiry, and with Emma Frost coming back around for the 3rd pass, I think she is by far a better character than Star-Lord and isn't even a legendary. So other than these characters, I can't with any strong conscience recommend the gearing up or sharding of any of the other Blitz characters to any large degree, but if you want to consider flash events such as like Block Party, you could consider characters like Miles Morales, OG Spider-Man, Luke Cage even, but that's a bit not really a big priority there. And for the Payday event, which is a monthly gold flash event, there is Mercenary Riot Guard down here at the bottom. Minions do cost a little bit less than non-minion characters, so it's 400 credits for minions and 500 for real characters. And this is a monthly gold event, which you could actually start collecting. He's probably the only other one that I would maybe recommend out of that. But really, the main reason why I recommend Blitz Orbs as well, beyond Rhino, to start off your game, and maybe Strife a little bit, is because it currently includes Domino at a 5% drop rate. So you can see that in the center pillar here. Actually, sorry, 10% drop rate, my bad. So you can see here that you can get 5 shards for Domino at a 10% chance. This is actually the only way that you can get her in the game. Now, this was very similar to Rescue. She was also a Blitz Orb exclusive, but eventually she got moved out of that into the store. So I imagine that Domino at some point will as well, but for the moment that you can. And Domino is actually used as an X-Force member, which is able to unlock Doc Ock. That's usually a bit of a later game consideration, but I just wanted to bring that up up here. You can get Blitz Orbs for cheaper than the character shards in there, and if there is no priority for any of these characters, they're all in here, and you can slowly acquire them through just getting Blitz Orbs, and you might actually pick up some Domino along the way. So if you're not in any rush to unlock any of these characters or gear them up or shard them, beyond Rhino, who I think is important to get to 5-star, I would say just really just pull some Blitz Orbs. You do get some gold on the side as well, here on the left and right pillar. It's not a lot, minimum of 3,000 to 6,000 gold, depending on your luck. But, you know, in the beginning, this might actually help you get some more gold for characters that you need to level up. So I would definitely recommend this, and that's what I think about the Blitz Store. Now, here in the Arena Store, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. There's a lot of solid characters here in the Arena Store nowadays, and way more usable ones compared to the Blitz Store. Typically, you'll be getting less credits here than you will for something like Blitz, so it is a bit more important to have a strategy here. As a fresher, newer player, I would personally recommend starting off with Vulture, as he is a member of the Sinister Six, and typically the starting team for the Villains campaign you'd want to go with that I mentioned prior with Rhino, because this team doubles both for the Sinister Six and Spider-Verse tags, which help to unlock Invisible Woman and Shuri. So you can use the same team for both while using them for the Villains campaign. Now, I do have to say something here, because we are going to be getting Swarm on Wednesday, I'm pretty sure, who is likely to appear, and he has the same tags as Vulture, except he's a newer character, and frankly a better character overall, who gets paired with Dr. Octopus down the line, being part of this sort of new chargeable Sinister Six group. On the flip side, he has this weird mechanic where he takes damage after 5 turns, and I don't have a lot of personal experience using him in the Villains campaign or campaigns in general, but I do feel he is probably the better investment long-term, because Vulture currently is benched, and it would be tough for me to get people to gear Vulture knowing that you're probably not going to get a lot of use out of him down the line. So I would actually start off for collecting shards for Swarm when he comes out, but if he becomes a campaign liability, then switch to using a different character, a different villain character like Venom or someone else that can fill this spot. So I don't know if I'd necessarily use Swarm to go through the Villains campaign, but I would still pick them up for shards so that you can use them to unlock Invisible Woman and Shuri, sorry. After this, I think most players should start collecting shards for Heimdall. He is an Asgardian usable in the Hero, Cosmic, and Mystic campaigns. You also need him as part of his team to unlock Black Bolt, who is one of the strongest legendaries in the game, and it's never too early to start collecting shards for him now ahead of time. After Heimdall, I would suggest picking up Mordo, actually. Where is he? Mordo's down here. Who is a villain Mystic controller. He, like Heimdall, is usable in the Villains, not Hero, but Villains campaign, Cosmic, and Mystic campaign, but he's also an important member of the Phoenix Legendary Unlock group, not to mention he's a pretty solid controller type character for these campaigns that he's usable in. And just to let people know that if you want to unlock the Phoenix Legendary, the Legendary Phoenix, you do need these characters at 6-star. So that's Villain, Mystic, Controller. There is a set of 6. Mordo is one of these. Now, after Mordo, I would probably move on to collecting shards for Crystal. Now, she's up at the top here. And this is for a similar reason to Heimdall, in order to prepare for the Ebony Maw, or the Legendary Ebony Maw, who is basically the #1 legendary in the game at this point, who is required to turn Thanos into his empowered form, which currently is really the top team at the moment in the game. And despite being a later game consideration, it's never too early to start collecting shards here, so you don't have to do it later. For that Ebony Maw unlock, you do need Inhumans at 5-star, unfortunately also including Black Bolt, who is the legendary that I talked about, who requires Asgardians. But getting her to at least, 4-ish star, will mean less work for you later when you do actually get around to unlocking them. This is where it starts to break down a little bit, at least for who's available now, and there is a bit of flexibility in terms of shard collection. At this time, I think I would also recommend Corvus Glaive, who, despite being a late-game Black Order consideration, is probably a fair bit better than a lot of the other choices. He is actually quite powerful of a character and a skill character, which have very few really good characters, so it's worth putting some gear into Corvus. Beyond these characters, it's a bit of a toss-up, really, between others like Juggernaut, who is a villain mystic and can be used for Villains Chapter 7 for the Hela unlock, but this isn't until level 70+. There's also Deadpool here, which is for the Doc Ock unlock, and also doubles for the Payday Monthly Flash event for gold. And finally, M'Baku, who's useful for the Chaos Theory event, which involves promotion credits for red stars and requires Wakandans at various star levels. So to recap, I think people should, now that I think about it, I think people should actually get Swarm when he comes out rather than Vulture, but if you're someone who's already in the game and you're already starting to go with Vulture, then keep going on with him if you prefer, but I think Swarm is the better long-term investment. And then Heimdall second to prep for Black Bolt and Asgardians, which are a solid team investment. Mordo, my third recommendation for any villain, cosmic, or mystic campaign considerations and prepping for Phoenix. And then finally Crystal fourth to start prepping for an Ebony Maw unlock. And then, like I said, after this, some combination of Corvus Glaive, Juggernaut, and Deadpool. Other than this, I don't think there are any crazy good reasons to unlock the others, but of course, if any of them interest you, then by all means go for it. So that's the end of my Arena Store guide. Alright, so here in the Raid Store, because the Raid Store only actually has 4 characters that you can see in the shop at any given time, the easiest way to show them all off is actually through the Raid Orb, which contains all of the characters in the store. So starting off as a first priority from this, I have to recommend both Mysterio and Thor. Now, the reason why this is a dual recommendation to start off is because Mysterio is currently farmable in the Heroes 2-3 node, which is pretty early, but this is a relatively recent addition, and I'm not sure for how long he's necessarily going to be in there. It's part of this new, like, Doctor Doom thing. I'm pretty sure it's in the event windows that you can see this. A lot of the Sinister Six and Wave 1 Avenger characters were added very early on into the Heroes and Villains chapter. So if you don't have them unlocked from this, then I recommend picking up some extra shards in the Raid Store until then. But after that, I do recommend focusing on Thor, who's both the Wave 1 Avenger and Asgardian. Typically, Wave 1 Avengers are the current recommendation for the Heroes campaign, and Thor helps a great deal with this team. Not only this, but Asgardians, as I mentioned previously with Heimdall in Arena, is required to unlock Black Bolt, one of the best damage dealing legendaries in the game. After this, I admit it becomes a little bit more flexible in what you want to do with your raid credits, from Killmonger for the, where is he? For the Chaos Theory Flash event, Ronan the Accuser, who is usable towards the Phoenix legendary event, like Mordo, which I mentioned in Arena, but does require 6-star for this. And then there's Rocket Raccoon. If you still want to get Star-Lord, personally, like the Blitz Orb, I would actually recommend picking up the Raid Orb for cheaper, and you get more shards. You get a total of 9 shards actually from the Raid Orb. If you're not in any particular rush for any of the characters after Mysterio and Thor, it's a good way to get a bunch of shards for more characters cheaper than individually buying them. But it just depends on what your priorities are and how quickly you need to collect shards for characters, whether or not you want to go direct or if you'd like to go with the Raid Orbs method. And to be honest, I forget how much currency it is to buy them, but I think it's I want to say 1,000 or so. I have a lot of these stocked up which I haven't opened up yet. Please let me know in the comments below if I'm wrong and it's not 1,000. Then please correct me down below. So that's actually just a pretty quick summary of the Raid Store for shards. There isn't a lot of priority characters in this one, but we'll be moving on to the War Store guide, where there's going to be a lot more characters to consider. Right, so there's actually quite a few characters in the War Store. Now, unfortunately, you only actually get to see 3 of them. So for that reason, we're actually going to go into my roster page where I have actually favorited all of the characters, all of the main characters that you can get in War Store. So these are the 9 characters that are not minions, who are the main characters that are in the War Store. And so we're going to be going over these one by one. So first off the bat, if you're new to the War Store, once you've unlocked them, I definitely recommend you going for Minerva. She is the newest addition to the War Store, one of the best characters to start off with, because frankly she is the best healer that you'll have for some time for most game modes she is usable in. This was a very recent addition, so definitely take advantage of this when you have the War Store available to you. She was previously only available at a 2% drop rate in premium orbs, which is really awful. I believe she is a 45 shard unlock, so definitely get on this as soon as possible. She will do you well in the Cosmic campaign if you still need to clear it, and for basically most Ultimus raids until much later in the later game, and for Dark Dimension when you get around to it as well. So very solid character here. Now, second on the priority list for me is Sif. Just like what I mentioned previously in this video for Heimdall and Thor, she is another member of that Asgardian team and will work towards unlocking Black Bolt. Historically, the one that took longer to get shards for, and thus the bit of a block since war credits are a lot more finite than the other resources. But I would recommend Minerva to about 3-star, maybe 4-star or so, and then switch over to farming Sif to 5-star for Black Bolt. Now, it's after this point where it gets a little bit interesting, I think. First off the bat, don't even bother with Cable or Nobu in the War Store because they both have nodes that you can farm them in if you need them. Now, Cable is in Mystic Node 19 for Cable, who is also required for Doc Ock as part of the X-Force team, but definitely not worth spending your War Creds on. And Nobu, who is actually usable for unlocking Phoenix, who again requires 6-star for unlocks, can be farmable at Villain 6-3, which is actually fairly easy to get to and definitely not worth using War Creds on. So the characters that are left are Sinister, Carnage, Pyro, X-23, and Graviton is here, but he got recently farmable on Do More Chapter 3, which is very late game, but unless he becomes usable for some new legendary character, he is not a priority farm at this point either. Of the ones left, really I think Sinister and Carnage are worth unlocking, at least at the 3-star level. Beyond that is really up to you and your point in the game, but X-23 is one of the harder characters to get shards for, as part of the X-Force for the Doc Ock release. While not a huge priority compared to Black Bolt, which Sif is used for, this is something to take under consideration. Pyro is usable for the Magneto event and is pretty important to the Brotherhood team, but this team is not a priority for the earlier mid game and something you can work on down the line. So to summarize, again, I would really start off with Minerva first, then move on to Sif, then Sinister and Carnage, and then finally X-23 when you want to start working on that Doc Ock legendary unlock. And these are my store recommendations of this video for the start of 2021. I don't see things changing too dramatically for at least the next few months, when we might have new characters added to this over time and an update will be needed. But I hope this helps for those who watch my channel or have stumbled upon this video who are in the early or mid game and need some suggestions for shard farming from these stores in the game, as sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming how many characters there actually are. If you found this informative, then please smash that like button down below and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. And of course, till next time guys, stay safe and I'll see y'all later. Boylon signing out.